welcome back to another episode of Arts and Crafts with Mike. We are going to go over the question of how do you sharpen the MDV. It is a chisel grind and it is a drop point recurve. Okay, so sharpening this tends to intimidate some people, even if they have a little bit of a background in it. So what I did was instead of me sharpening it and talking to you guys about it, I went to the guy that I have sharpened all my blades, which is Javan Roberts. He is the owner and the main man at Gray's Customs. And so you guys have probably seen his work. It is masterful if you want an heirloom type blade, or if you want a blade that someone would be honored to die by, then I would buy one of his blades. They are obviously more expensive, but he does everything from the ground up custom. He is a true master of his craft. So, what I wanted is I wanted him to cover how he would sharpen this because he was integral to the design of the edge and everything that goes into it. And so he had a few ways to do that that start at the beginner level and then goes through. So let's take a look at what we talked about. I know it's not the optimal thing, but these honing stones
Yes.
or rods, just as a easy way for like the kitchen knives, or even with like the MDV folder, it doesn't actually have the same kind of recurve,
Right, right.
right? So like this is almost a similar edge all the way around.
Yeah.
So something like this, would it be okay if they had the proper angle on this?
Yeah, yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I want to give them
Options.
more than one option.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's better than trying to do it on a square stone because
You just gotta work on the edge.
all the square stone's going to do until if you had a square stone and you work that square stone over and over again, you're going to cut a radius on it, and then it'll be good. But to start with, if you're chasing the edge, so what you're going to do is you're going to create like steps. So this edge is going to like hunt along the edge, so you're going to almost get like a nice stagger instead of a finish. But eventually, the more you work that edge, you're going to create a radius, which then will give you like that nice clean edge, which is where the radius stones and the round rods are great because you already have the radius you're working with.
Right.
Okay. But yeah, like the honing stones are, round rods are good. So you can make yourself just like some simple guides if you're doing stuff by hand.
Okay.
Just to give yourself a feel. Say we do like 20 degrees. So that will give us right, so super simple to give yourself a reference, but then when you're, like to say you're setting up to sharpen with one of these, it gives you a nice, just so you can get the feel, right?
Okay.
And then I'd get rid of that, but it gives me that initial, like that's my 20 degrees. So what I'm trying to do is like fix as many elements of sharpening as we can.
Right.
Because unless you've done it for, you watch the chefs on these and it's so fast,
Right.
but it's years of repetition that gets that. So I would make myself a little guide, and when I use these, I hold them square to this because I don't use them enough to be great freehand.
Right.
So I'd hold this one, I'd get my little angle set there, That gives me my feel. And by fixing this one, you see, if I do this, everything's floating.
Right.
So there's too many elements where I can create error. Whereas I like to hold these firm, and you can fix your angle, and just draw up that one like that.
And so
You can do the same on the other side without fixing it.
okay, and so you start with that knurling side first, and then go to the flat side.
It depends on where your edge is. You can feel that was actually pretty sharp already. But it depends on where your edge is. If you're just trying to like gently bring the edge up, then I'd go straight to your high finish edge.
Okay.
Whereas if you're trying to get like a chip or a ding out, then go with your rough edge and then progress over.
Okay, and so I saw that you stopped basically where the recurve starts.
Yes.
Right, and so that you would just redo that from
Yeah,
that recurve point.
I would sharpen these in 2 sections just because it's much easier to follow that radius than now
Right.
trying to follow all the way around. So because resharpening a radius tends to be trickier, I personally would break them down into 2 sections of sharpening.
Right.
So I'd resharpen the recurve, and then if I had a flat stone or something, then I'd come in and I'd get the radius up to the tip.
Are those going to be easier to sharpen than, say, the MDV, which is a chisel grind, or do you believe that it's well? First off, the edge on the MDV is obviously a little bit different. That's
Yeah.
why we have those stones. But let's say if you had a normal chisel grind that was just a straight edge,
Yeah.
is that going to be harder to do on these or easier? Should it be a flat stone?
It should be exactly the same. Sharpen. The only thing that will change is your angle, because kind of on a chisel, all your sharpen angle tends to be on one side,
Right.
because you're creating this as opposed to this.
Right. And then you finish it by going on the flat side.
As flat as possible, yeah. So if this is a chisel grind, I would come in and sharpen this side, and then because I'm going to create a burr that's going the other way, I just want to come as flat as possible and just knock that burr off.
Right. Okay. No, makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, for me, like repeating myself on this one, but as many elements as I can fix is going to make my life so much easier.
Is there a reason why I would have both of these honing rods? So like it's supposed to be one's a honing rod and then one is if you needed to really grind down on it.
Good. Yeah. So your rougher one, again, if you've got like a little chip or a ding you're trying to remove, you want to remove that with as aggressive a stone as you can get away with, because if you try doing that with 1,000 grit stone, you're going to be there for hours and hours on end.
Right.
So I would use like if I'm just trying to touch the edge up, like it's still sharp, but it needs to go a little higher, I would use like the high finishing stones.
Okay. Yeah, it's because it goes 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 on these.
Right.
Is there really that much of a difference between those that you would have both, or would you try to find something that would be in like an 800 range?
I think you're getting up to 3,000-4,000 area is real fine tuning. I mean, when I sharpen to 400 grit, and then I finish with a leather strop.
Okay.
Sometimes I will go all the way up, but it tends to, you're getting a finer and finer edge. But when you freehand sharpen, I would like 1,000, 2,000 is plenty of edge on it.
So the reason that I bought these is because Jess's family bought all of the kitchen knives,
Right.
and they use them all the time. And so every Christmas I have to sharpen their knives, and I'm like, oh, I don't know. Maybe we could provide something where I don't have to do it every single time.
Teach a little bit,
Yeah, you know, would that help or work for those knives
Absolutely.
better?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, because I don't feel like I need to get the big monstrosity out every single year
Right.
to do that if they're honing them.
Yeah, and these would work great for kitchen knives. And the same thing, I'd fix it, choose your angle, and then either draw up or draw down on it just to create that. And then when you get happy with it, you can start doing like the
Do your Gordon Ramsay thing.
yeah. But that's years of doing it every day.
He's
right?
like
So
he's
your
so
angle-
fast.
Yeah, your angle is fixed, everything's. But yeah, for me, it's, as I say, the more things I can fix,
Makes
so that I'm
sense.
not floating around. Because like this, if this one goes this way and this one goes this way, I'm doing a bigger angle. If this one comes this way, and so I'm messing with my angles all the time.
That makes sense.
because
Angle's
it's
gotta
the
be the exact same.
repetition of angle. So that's where like having a little guide like this is so useful. Even just a little cardboard one, because even when I'm coming to do the tip, I set my angle. Now I can feel that one, and then I can draw back. And that's how I break this one into two sections. I'd sharpen this and then then blend that one across. For me, it's how I sharpen on the belt as well. If I've got a recurve, I'll sharpen the recurve, and then I'll sharpen the tip, because I don't want to try and flow that complex line. That's a lot of muscle memory to remember.
Yeah.
And then what I do is I do the recurve, then I do the tip, and then I'll do one pass and blend them all together.
So you don't end up with a blend mark.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
But just for me,
And that's just a real light pass then.
yeah, and it's just when I've got my burr and I go up to a higher belt, then I'll do some blending passes with the belts.
But everybody buying these 800 and 1,000 grit stones, couldn't people just have like a 400 grit stone that would cut really fast?
400.
They'd get less frustrated and they would do a great job.
Yeah, so 400 grit, and then like use a leather strop or something to remove your burr.
So take your belt off and flick the belt
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously I haven't been officially trained in sharpening. What is the first off? What's the danger in sharpening it on the stone and not using the leather strop? And then what is the reason that I hear people say that you have to?
To strop.
Yeah.
Okay. So. And this is just my thoughts and opinions. There may be people out there who are like, oh no, that's not right.
But that's all I care about. So
But there isn't anybody in the building right now that knows more about sharpening. So
correct. Like you're the guy that I go to. So
there's nobody within the circle of people I know of, many thousand that I know, that knows how to sharpen.
Again, that's just repetition, making mistakes, and
Right.
trial and error.
that's
Over
like
and over and
jujitsu.
over.
Exactly. It's no different. It's just that. Find the mistakes,
Yep.
fix the mistakes, move on. So when you sharpen, so this is my tip.
Mhm.
When I sharpen one side, what I do is I leave a burr.
Right. Okay.
And that's when I'm sharpening. That's what I want to achieve on my first passes. Is when I'm sharpening on the belts. What I do is I go and go until I see a burr on the whole edge. So what I'm trying to do is create an infinite edge here. So I don't want to flat. I want this to like infinitely be pointy. And I know I've achieved that when I throw the burr over.
Okay.
Now when I sharpen the other side, I throw a burr over again. So what the leather strop does is, because it's not aggressively removing material, it knocks my burrs off.
Oh, so sharpening one side and then sharpening the other side doesn't.
Remove the burr.
Remove the burr.
You just flash the burr back over again.
Okay.
So for me, like stropping or finishing with a super high stone
Uh-huh.
will help remove that burr. And you can feel it when you run the knife through paper. You can feel like sometimes it's got that jaggedness, and
Yeah.
you know it's sharp, but it's jagged, and all you're feeling is that tiny, tiny burr that's wrapping over.
Right.
And it'll feel, you'll feel the blade on one side, and it'll be like, oh, that's crazy sharp, and then the other side feels dull, and all you're doing is catching your skin on the burr on one side, and then you're rolling off the burr on the other.
And so that's eliminated through a leather strop only, or a leather strop and a super high grit.
You can go super high grit. I've seen people have a piece of plastic and they drag the knife through a piece of plastic, which, because the burr is so fine, it will drag the burr clear. But my personal preference is my leather belt. Or you can do. That's what I've got. So I've got. This is kind of deviating, but you've got like the leather. But you get like cardboard wheels, leather wheels. So that's another great way to remove like your burr. This is a leather wheel with buffing compound in it,
Oh, okay.
or a felt wheel, or a piece of felt, but just something to knock that burr off.
And you wouldn't need this machine.
No.
You would just need that.
Yeah, just that, or like just a piece of leather to drag it down,
Okay. Awesome.
or a super high grit stone and just do a couple of fine passes just to remove that burr.
So what's a super high grit stone?
1,000 grit to 2,000 grit for me would be
Oh, okay. So
very high.
So basically what we got out here.
Yes. Yeah, so you could,
So these aren't really for sharpening, they're just, you know,
they're honing stones. The edge is already created and this just
just,
helps reform the edge.
okay. So is there a reason why you would have to do it a lot? Like you should just do it like probably once or twice,
Just
right?
a couple of passes until you feel your edge come in. Yeah, you don't want to overwork. So here's the other thing that happens when you sharpen. Every time you sharpen, you walk. So this is your. If this is like your knife edge. So every time I sharpen, I walk this edge back. So I'm shortening the life expectancy of the knife every time I sharpen. So if I over sharpen, I am slowly diminishing the life expectancy of my life because I'm walking that edge closer and closer to the spine.
So even though it feels cool to do it,
Yeah.
they don't need to be doing that every single time that they pull out their kitchen knives, right? Like
No.
this is after a couple months worth of, hey, this isn't as sharp as it used to be.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna hone it a little bit.
Yeah.
Because if they do it every day, like, because on the shows it seems like that's what they do. They just go
Yeah.
at it, and it's like if that actually grinds down the knife's lifespan, then you know you'd be
Yeah.
killing your knives after a while.
Yeah, because you're slowly just you're walking this edge further and further back towards the spine, and you're getting into, so if there's your bevel angle, each time I walk back and back into a thicker part of the bevel, so then my sharpen edge gets bigger and bigger and bigger, so it's,
Okay.
yeah.
No, that's all great information.
Yeah, it's just things I think about when I'm doing stuff.
No, it's stuff that's actually it's not super difficult to find online. It's just it's confusing.
Yes.
Because when one person talks about it, I'm like, okay, I got it, and then I'll listen to another video, and then I'm like, that actually almost contradicts what this guy's saying.
Yeah.
I don't have a universal, this is what you should do.
Data, yeah.
So yeah.
So the other thing, like, and when we're talking about like the different grits, so when you look at an edge through magnification, what we have is lots of teeth.
Yes.
So if this is like your 220, this will be like your 440, and then when you're getting into the 2000, you're getting smoother and smoother. But sometimes small teeth are great, right? Because they grab and they cut, and as long as I flash those burrs off, it's great.
Right.
So I've done it before where I've done a 120 grit on one side and then polished into it on the other. So you kind of have like aggressive teeth with micro grit on it. It makes for a scary cutting edge.
So that actually brings up another question that I was thinking about. So like on my forgot what it's called, the one that we advise people to grab, the one that does it on both sides. Anyways, I have stones ranging from 80 all the way up to like 4,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't need to go 80, then 120, then 300, then 400, then do 1,000, then 2,000, then 3. Like that's not how that process works.
No. So if you already have an edge,
Right.
and all you're trying to do is touch it up, I would be coming in around 400 grit just to touch it up. The 80 for me is if you're trying to. So if I already have so where I start is I have a flat.
Right.
So I'm not just sharpening, I'm creating the edge.
Exactly.
So if you've got this and you have a flat on it, then I would come in with like an 80 or a 120 to create the edge and then move on. Whereas if I already have an edge, what I want to do is just clean the edge up, because I probably created some little flats on there from use. And
Right.
So I would come in at like 220, 440 just to create that edge again.
Okay. Yeah, and so I don't have to. So that was one of the things that obviously I've been doing wrong. Is they gave you all these stones, and I was like, so you have to go all the way up
Right.
until it gets to like 4,000, and then that's when it's finished.
Yeah.
And it takes forever, obviously.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and it depends on kind of what sort of edge you're after. Now, I like, I'd say like on my more production knives, I do 440 and then leather strop. On like my signature stuff, I go up to 2,000 grit and then strop.
Right.
I like for around 440 for me gives you that nice, you've got those little teeth there and you can feel like that little grip to it.
Okay, makes sense. Is there anything special on our MDVs that we should focus on as far as grit and that type of thing? I mean, I know we're going to work on these stones once they're done. But
I wouldn't like. So the higher I try to go, and the more times I visit the stone, the more chances of error there is. The more chances I got my angle wrong, and I've knocked my edge off. So for me, it's like decide what edge you want, and then do as little as possible to get there.
Right. So I don't sound dumb. The higher grit you go, it doesn't mean it's going to be sharper. Or is it? Like,
yes, because you're getting finer and finer teeth. What really defines your sharpness, though, is your sharpening angle.
correct. Right.
Because I want to be like as close to an infinite edge as possible. So the higher grit I get, the closer I get to infinite, because I get smaller and smaller teeth along there.
Right.
But you still, like I say, like I've done some, you can do some aggressive sharpening. As long as you remove the burr, you still get a incredibly functional edge.
Correct. And so the higher grit you go, let's just say I go all the way, to 4,000 grit, and it's really, really sharp. By doing that, does it reduce the durability of that edge because it's so thin at the top now? Like there's not as, or as, do you stay at 400 because it has it maintains its edge longer? Like, is there even a factor on that? I understand that's metal, but
So my thinking would be the finer you go, the better that it will hold the edge for longer, I would think. Because if you imagine if I've got all these little teeth, and then this, it's easier to knock these teeth off
right.
than it is a true edge. So I would,
Okay.
and I'm just like, it's not something I've really considered until you asked the question, but in my head, like the higher grit I go, which means that this edge is getting truer and truer and truer, it has more support and it's less likely to knock those little teeth out.
So unless you hit something like bone,
Yeah.
you would be fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's just, like, it's not a question I'd actually thought about until you asked. It's like, yeah,
That's why I'm here.
There's things they don't tell you about, like fixing your points, right? It's just like, pick your angle and go at it. And it's
Right.
like, okay, but what I need to do is make sure I have that angle and that I'm repeating that angle, that's really the core to sharpening, is accurate repetition.
Right.
Yeah, so that one, so that's a 440 grit and then leather strop.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Which you can take it higher, and as I say, I think having, like, thinking about that question, yeah, you're going to get a longer lasting edge. But for what I do, it's a good edge, and they hold. I had a guy who did one of the nymphs. He skinned 5 deer before he needed an edge on it.
Right.
So it's like that's a good working edge. It would keep that.
No, I mean that makes a lot of sense, and that's the kind of information,
Yeah.
Because the other thing is you are normally talking, or not talking, but like you're watching videos from the manufacturers of the stones,
Yeah.
and not saying that they're doing this on purpose, but it's almost like they're trying to sell more stones.
Right. Yeah.
And so what happens is when they go through their process, you see more and more use of it, and you're like, oh, so I need all of
So
those.
I need, yeah.
Right. And in reality, since you're not selling any stone, you're telling me exactly, well, this is how I do this,
Yeah.
and you're the best that I know at it. So like, it doesn't make any sense to,
Yeah. So when I sharpen my knives, I start at 220 grit belt, and I do the 440. So I create the edge with the 220, then I polish it out with the 440, and like my belt's a little blunt, so it's like the 440 is a little blunt, so it's almost polishing a little bit,
right.
and then leather strop. So those are from like my production blades. That's all the sharpening I do.
What's that sharpening system that we?
Wicked edge.
Wicked Edge. So Wicked Edge has that liquid.
Right home. Yeah.
So, just what is that? Do I need that?
Yes.
On those.
Yes, because if you don't use honing fluid,
Uh-huh.
like you can feel that stone is
Yeah.
just full. It's just full of slurry. So every time I take a pass, I'm removing stock from the edge of my knife, that stock has to go somewhere. So if you look at it under a microscope,
It's really packed, isn't it?
well, it looks like this, right?
Oh.
So all the black dust you get off your edge, if you look at it under a microscope, it's tiny little shavings because each little high point on that stone takes a skim off the edge of your knife. And what happens is if I don't use honing oil or some media to keep this fluid, because if it's fluid, I can wipe it and clean it off the stone. What it'll do is it'll fill your stone.
Right.
Because you have peaks and valleys, and all I do is I fill up all those peaks and valleys with shavings, basically.
Right.
And then my stone is dull. So then I have to redress the stone.
Yeah, that's that stuff I said would be pretty bad if you waterboarded somebody with it.
That wouldn't be good, no.
All those people's like, waterboarding isn't torture. Oh, I got something.
Have you tried it?
So the idea is to set up a system or set it up so that people have to drag the knife across the stone the least amount of times, because the more they do it.
That's my thinking, is visit the stone as little as possible to create your edge. Because I'm clogging my stone each time, so my stone's going to need more maintenance. I'm just walking that edge of my knife further and further back each time I sharpen. So if I'm coming in and I'm doing like 80 to 4,000 each time, I'm probably walking that edge back 2 or 3 thou each time. So.
Wow. So I always tell people that you should have a people knife and then obviously utility knife. Is there a metal that you suggest that would hold a edge longer for utility use? So obviously the people knife is should never be used.
Yeah.
So it should be
Just needs that edge for a
Yeah,
short
like-
period of time.
Correct. It's like
Yes.
it's sharp forever, right? Unless I use it.
Right.
And then obviously, things will happen to that knife later. But like the utility knife, they're using it on everything.
Yeah.
Right. And so I understand dumb things like people use it on tape, and then they're like, my stuff is dull, and it's like, well, if you cleaned your damn blade,
Yeah.
you would probably have a sharper knife because there's gunk in that shit.
Yeah,
But after a while, it'll dull down. Is D2 the metal that you would want to hold to? The normal, I don't know what Benchmade's main metals that they use, but it's a cheaper whatever it is. Is that something that's better for utility?
It's you're getting into the old debate.
I was going to say there needs to be a disclaimer.
Yeah. Well, it's
Yeah.
it's the old debate of, do I want to have a knife that's hard to sharpen, but I don't sharpen it very often, or do I want a knife that's easy to sharpen, but I have to sharpen it often?
Right.
So again, my opinion, I like super steels, like the CPM Crucible range, because you put an edge on it, and it's difficult to sharpen, but I don't have to do it very often, because again, if I'm looking at trying to create a heritage knife, which is going to last through generations, I don't want to sharpen it very often, because each time I sharpen it, I shorten the life expectancy of that knife.
But with that knife, they shouldn't be using it every day. Like
No.
that's not exactly the
Yeah.
purpose of that quality of a knife. But when you talk about hard to sharpen, does that mean that somebody wouldn't be able to do it with
No.
regular stones? They need the equipment that you.
No, it'll just take longer with regular stones. So if you're dealing with, like the hardest one I've worked with is CPM S110, which is coming out at like 64 HRC.
Okay.
So it takes more work to sharpen it, but you only have to, like, even if you're working with it daily, you'd have to sharpen it like once a month as opposed to once a week.
Right.
It's almost where you could almost go as far as saying on a knife like that, like an S110 or something like that, that's so hard. It really almost, you should have, unless you're really, really good at maintaining your angle every single time, you're almost better to just say, this is one of those products that I own that I send back to the manufacturer or to a professional sharpening service to sharpen, because I'm not going to be as good, and I'm probably just going to just remove product off the knife, and it's just going to dull and dull and dull.
Yeah.
Just because it is, like, I'm going to need, instead of like a D2 knife, let's say I could do 10 passes on each side. And so I can maintain my angle for 10 passes and then 10 passes going the other way. But for like something like S110, that might be 40 passes, right? So now I've got to now the difficulty of sharpening that knife is times 4.
Is your
right?
repetition.
So then it's like, well, this knife is worth more. The steel's worth more. I'm going to send it to a professional sharpening person because then I'll get a good edge on it, and I'll take less material off, and I'll end up with the proper angles instead of a rounded angle or kind of the right angle and then the wrong angle and then the wrong angle and then because that's what happens. You do one angle and then what is it? Even a degree you change.
Yeah, and you can see it. Like you can literally see it on some knives that come back into the shop for touching up. If this is my center line for my edge, my bevel comes down here, and then the sharpen angle kind of goes.
It's like they sharpen the stop sign.
And you can kind of see like the three different angles where they've chased it around to create the edge.
Wow.
And then of course you're feeling for the sharp edge, and you're like, that's not sharp. That's because you just pushed it over, and then you pushed it back. And
yeah, the same thing, right? So if I've got my edge here, and I start sharpening in here,
Oh wow.
then I'm not getting that edge.
And is that why you use a marker?
Yes. Yeah. So what I would do is just to check I'm hitting my edge right.
it's the greatest trick ever that nobody seems to understand.
Let's just create a tide mark, right? Because then as I pass, I know.
You want a cheap here? Here's a cheap, shitty knife that's very dull.
Yeah. So if I just create my tide mark on here. And then
That knife's been well abused. That's not my people knife. That's my open box, pry on things and do everything that's my do as I say, not as I do knife.
so there you can see, I know that I've hit the edge because that black marker's gone. Whereas if I
And you're not trying to take all the marker off. You're just trying to take it at the edge.
yeah, perfect idea is if I'm matching the angle,
I
will remove the whole thing, which is perfect scenario. But if I'm, if it's an old edge or it needs to be polished up, what I want to do is make sure I'm removing that black from the edge, which means that I'm sharpening that edge clean.
Okay.
It's a great trick, but even on Wicked Edge, when you're not exactly sure what.
Yeah, just
A lot of people are always asking, "What's your angle?" So this is something I always like to bring up to people. People will send us an email and they'll say, "What is your sharpen angle?" Well, that is mental masturbation that the fixed knife companies have put in people's heads, because even the finest knife makers in the world, like Javan, hand sharpen. So you don't set a jig that says this is 22.6 degrees and you go sharp. You do it by hand and by eye.
Yeah.
And you then don't measure that edge. So then when somebody comes back, you have a mental idea what it is.
Yeah.
But if you're working with a fixed knife sharpening system that has increments of 1 degree each way, and then you can say, well, our edge is 20 degrees.
It's a datum. It's a start.
It's a starting point.
It's a start point. So create your tide mark.
Right.
Do 20 degrees. Take a swipe.
And see where you are.
Just look where if I've got black on the edge and I need more angle. If I'm clearing the edge, then carry on sharpening.
And then create a log, right? Just have a simple piece of paper or a little book that you go, okay, this is, my, whatever knife. This is my Blackwater knife. I sharpened it at 21 degrees. And then next time you come back, you set your equipment to 21 degrees. Then you can sharpen that same edge back, and then you're not taking excess material off the knife.
And you only need to do 1 or 2 passes for that. You don't need to do like 5 or 6 or 7 to make sure that the angle's proper.
Yeah, no, I'd do the tide mark, and if you're on the wicked edge, I'd take 1 pass, and then I'd
Just
see.
one.
I'd
Okay.
see where I'm at.
Yeah, that's another one of those in instructionals I've seen them like, do it 10 times, and then if it's gone, then then try it again, and I'm like, I don't know any better, so I'm just like, okay.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm removing material, I don't want to be removing material I don't want to remove. So I would do 1 clean pass, and even if you get like a little magnifying glass or whatever, so you can really look at that edge, and then I see where my tide mark is, and I adjust the suit, and then I'll sharpen.
And just because it's one angle, say it's 20 degrees perfectly on one side, that does not mean it's 20 on the other, right? Like, so it's not one of those things where you match. You have to do the exact same feel out process on the other side, regardless of how it seems to be off.
Yeah. I mean, and if you wanted to recut all the edges, then you go in. So say I desperately want to have 20 degrees on every face on my knife, and I'm going to put it in, put my tide mark on, and then I'm going to use a more aggressive stone to recut.
So that's when you would
recut
have
all my faces. So you
an,
come in.
an 80 or
Yeah.
120, and then you would force it into
Yes,
that angle.
I'm totally recutting. I'm not trying to follow the original edge. I'm trying to create a brand new edge at that point.
Which is not a bad thing either.
No, if you
I mean,
want
not on like a Skallywag knife. Wouldn't
Right.
do it on Gray's custom
No,
knife because
Well, first off, I mean,
Your edge is your
and,
edge,
and
right?
any Grace custom knife should be sent in, like, but like that's what I tell people. But you know, if you're going to have a utility knife, you're not going to send it in every single time.
no.
But on that, is there any negative to taking something? So say it's 20 degrees, and for whatever silly reason you're like, I want a 15 degree.
Yeah.
Is there a negative to doing that? Is it going to fuck with the hardness? Is it going to, as long as you're doing it properly?
With this stuff, you're not going to mess with the hardness because you're not generating heat.
Okay.
If you have a moving belt system, what was that?
Oh, what was that?
Oh.
Work.
I had a workshop which basically ran like a little, like 6-inch by half-inch belt, and then you drew the knife through.
Right.
And it would burn the tip on every knife you dragged through.
Wow.
Because you'd come in and then the belt would wrap around the tip. And
People would hold it there.
yeah, you draw it through, and it's kind of like, and as soon as you get any discoloration, you trash the heat treat.
Oh wow.
But so with stones, because everything is moving so slow, so you don't have friction from a moving belt, like you're not going to have issues. As soon as you go to like any moving system, like even a big stone wheel, if you're not cooling, friction generates heat. Heat can potentially damage the heat treat.
Well, that makes sense.
With anything, it's a learned talent, right? It's not something you're just going to pick up. I mean, this is where lack of the Boy Scouts really affects people these days, because they taught you and you had to get a merit badge for sharpening a knife. And if your instructor didn't like your sharpened edge, then you went back and you practiced with a little wood block, holding the knife on the wood block to maintain that edge. They beat that into your head. Now that's not taught anymore. It's not taught that the way to sharpen a knife is to maintain that exact angle every single pass of the knife and take your time. It's not something that takes 5 seconds.
Patience and consistency is
It's a
key.
skill.
Yes.
That's one of the things that I will be telling everyone is you're learning a new skill. These are best practices. You may almost be not sacrificing the blade, but like,
Have a practice,
you're definitely not going to get it right on the first time. So if you expect it to go back to factory settings on this first round, it's not going to work out for you, you know. But that's with any skill. Like you're not going to.
Repetition
And practice. Don't be afraid to practice, right? I mean, you're not going to ruin the knife per se, or at least a lesser expensive knife. I wouldn't practice on one of your $2,500 knives, but you certainly could practice on a $160 Skallywag dew claw.
If you've got blunt kitchen knives, that's a great place to start,
It's a
right?
great place to start.
Go through your kitchen drawer, get all your blunt knives out, and sit and stone them till you got your angles and stuff. So.
Yeah, because that's great practice because it's a long knife, right?
And they're nice to sharpen as well because you're dealing with one consistent flat edge.
Right.
Very little curve, so it's a nice sweep. Whereas you start getting into like the MDV with recurves and stuff, then obviously there's a little more challenge because now I'm not just drawing, I'm rolling at the same time. So there's another element of movement you have to think about.
Well, that does bring up the MDV. So what is the issue? So the top part of this is going to be normal, just like we did. Down here, you can really screw up the blade if you try to use a flat stone on that. So,
So if I try to use a flat stone, what I'm doing is I'm hunting that edge. So as I draw, if I pause, I'm basically cutting a little right angle in the edge. So as I draw across here, if I'm not like super fluid with it, I'm going to be cutting like little teeth down the edge, which is where like using a radius stone for coming in here is so.
So I could use one of these. To do that.
Yep. So the same thing, I would like set my angle, come in. And then I would just sharpen that area. And then if you wanted to use this one, you could sharpen the rest there. But I just like breaking them down into 2 parts because then it's not as complex a movement.
And then on the back side, you would just
come in
lay it flat.
Yeah, come in as flat as possible. And that one I would probably try and break. That one you could hit and. But see how more even like going flat. See how much more complex my movement gets.
Yes.
Because I'm trying to draw up around the edge of it. That's why I like breaking it into two
And
two
then the
sections.
very last part of that would be take a leather strop and
Leather strop, or like if you've got one of these like a hone-in stone, just to knock that burr off.
Okay.
And you can feel it pretty quick because like you can see it just grabbing my,
yeah.
and I'm just getting the same on the other side. And if you try cutting a piece of paper with it, if it's like ragged and feathering, I still have a burr. If it's a nice clean cut, then I've got rid of all the burrs.
Okay.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but sharpening the chisel grind is one of the easiest knives there is to sharpen, but also confuses people the most. Because one, you can't do it on a fixed knife sharpening system because typically most fixed knife sharpening systems won't pick up the angle that you need to do it.
Yeah.
So you need to do it on a stone.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, it's the same animal.
Right.
It's no difference. All I'm doing is changing my angle. So if here's my center line on a normal edge, right? So if I've got 20, like this is 40 degrees total, right? 20 degrees aside.
Right.
Then if I do a chisel grind, all I've done is shift that center line.
Right.
The animal's the same.
So it's 40 degrees on one side instead of 20 on each.
Yeah. So all I'm doing is I'm taking most of my stock off this side and then I'm just flashing this one.
Which confuses people because when they use their fixed knife sharpening system, it goes to like 31 degrees or something like that.
Yeah.
And they're like, I can't get it to go deep enough. And then we've even gotten some pictures of people that have sent us
Well, you'll get
MDVs that their sharpened edges clear up into here because they've drugged the stone across trying to get the angle.
And it's a lack of understanding of how the knife is sharpened, that all the bevel is on one side.
So we'll just make a blank statement that the MDV needs to be sharpened by hand on a curved stone for the radius, a flat stone for the front. It would be the safest way.
Yeah, and if you've got a wicked edge, you can come in here at like 5 degrees and just
clean that edge
clean
off,
that edge
which
off.
would be really nice, yeah.
Which, as well as the other thing, is if like
So you wouldn't even touch the other side.
you wouldn't necessarily have to touch this side depending on how you sharpen it. You could just put this up and come in at like 5 degrees and just do
And
this
that
one.
might really make it sharp.
Yeah, because all you're doing is, it doesn't matter which side I remove stock, all I'm trying to do is clean that infinite edge back up
Right.
again. So you could put
So
this
that
up in the wicked edge and just chase that as
That would
shallow
be
as
the
you could.
easiest way to do it.
Yeah,
It'd be nice to use one of the rounded stones on the recurve part.
yeah,
wouldn't
yeah. I mean, you could easily like almost flat right, and then just rock her up a little bit.
it? Maybe like a degree up.
Yeah, and you do here. So as I did that, here's where you're going to have to be careful, like on these, because if I come here, I'm gonna knock my tip off and round my tip.
Right.
So you have to be like this is nice and clean, nice and clean. I'm sharpening, and then just back off on the tip, because what I don't want to do is drop off the side, and then I'm gonna start knocking my tip off.
It'll just make it round on the tip.
Yeah,
as
I'll
it
just
comes down the
I'll just
side.
drag it down the side by accident. I'll flatten it.
Right.
That's where like these are really nice because you'll roll around and then you can like roll off the stone nice and clean.
So for people that want to do a really, really cool job on sharpening the MDV, the curved stones are the way to
You
do
can
it.
feel just coming off the flat is.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That's really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't take that much either because I used the fuck out of this one.
Yeah. So that's what, like going back to what you were saying about, do I have to start at the low grit stones? You really don't. It's kind of start at a high one and then see how much you have to remove to recreate your edge.
Right. So using that, is there anything special with that?
Hold the angle the same every time.
So the closer I can get to this radius, the easier the sharpening will be. So if I had a stone that would match this radius perfectly, I could just put it up and just drag it along it, and that's ideal scenario. So the closer this radius gets, the better.
For 1995, 3 payments of 1995, we can make a special stone for your knife.
So I would do the same thing with these, which is fix as many things as possible.
Well, that makes sense.
So yeah, then the same thing. And these are a little tricky because I want to get right in on that corner. So I'm going to and just start chasing that. And the same thing again, I would create my tide mark, take one drag, see how close I am to the right angle. Let's grab that.
And do the same thing, just sharpen that till you roll that burr over that backside.
Yeah.
And then use the flat side to do the back side, right? Or would you still use the?
You can use this one. So yeah, so we create the tide mark. Right now I'm just guessing at the angle. You can see I'm incredibly high on that one. Now I'm starting to chase her in. It's like everything we were just saying about how all the angle is on one. So now I've hit it. You can see now I hit my angle right. So by just taking one pass and then checking, it's helping me like freehand that angle in, so I've got it right. And that's again is everything we just talked about. Is all the angle is on one side. So I dropped in at where I would normally kind of think is right, and now I've almost got to double it to get the right angle. Yeah, it's just a matter. You can see that's the
Yeah.
So we get a lot of questions about that on when you're doing putting the mark on. I've had people come back and say, "Oh well, I'm a pretty good sharpening. I'm pretty good at sharpening. I don't need to do that." But yet, here's somebody that makes knives every day for lots of years.
Yeah.
And you're still utilizing that mark to find that angle. So
Well, every knife's different, right?
people need to drop their like, "Oh, I'm really good at doing this," and go back to the basics, which
It's belt and
works for
braces.
everything,
Belt
right?
and braces, right? You back everything up to make sure you're doing it right.
Right.
Because you're taking material away.
Yeah.
Like you're shortening the life of your knife,
Yeah.
which is not good.
And then this one you could, like this not so nice, you could just come in on this one. And then again, just be careful with that one because it's so easy to keep chasing. And then as I chase, I'm starting to lift my hand because I'm coming off. I'm trying to take the knife off, and I'm gonna roll that corner.
Okay.
It's something I learned with belts because you kind of pull the knife off the belt and you roll your tips really, really, really easy.
Okay. And this is,
That's the 220.
yeah. So you would want to go to one of the higher grit to
Yep.
finish that, or
So I would just create that edge, and here's where you can play because I could do like a nice 220 aggressive on here, and then I could do 1,000 on the back, and then I've got micro teeth on my 220, if that makes sense.
yes.
Which is something I played with, and I enjoy doing that, doing like a aggressive grit on one side and then almost a polish on the other, creates like a scary edge.
Awesome.
Terrifying edge. Yeah. We did those originally on the dew claws, and they were frightening. It's like almost a microscopic serration.
It is, yeah. Yeah, you've got, my thinking on it is you've got teeth on teeth, right? So I've got my 220 teeth, which are jagged, and then I come and I polish the back. So now on top of each one of these teeth, I have
A sharp edge.
a polished edge, yeah. So it like grips and cuts and grips and cuts.
Yeah, it's scary. We were cutting like 1/8 inch leather like it was paper, like shredding it like. And just, yeah, that was a cool edge.
Yeah.
Anything else that I would need to know to pass on? Or?
I think that's about it. If you have any
Practice.
questions,
Hey, it's
is-
just a real basic
yeah.
overview. I'm not trying to.
But sharpening, it's one of those things that you look at it and it looks dead simple, and it is dead simple if you can repeat the process with each swipe I take down the start.
Right.
That's where the issue comes in. Is already said it over and over again, but repetition of angle.
Okay.
Repetition of angle and stroke, and that's why I will fix as many elements as I can, because I know that I'm already the issue, right? It's me who's the issue. So,
Yes.
so the more things that I can make me not being the issue, the better.
It's like shooting. It's like you
Yeah,
are.
I'm the problem.
You're the problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The gun shoots perfectly.
Yeah,
it's you.
And
Exactly the same with
sidetrack-
sharpening. It's me who's messing it up. It's not the stone. It's not the knife.
Right.
It's not my sharpening system. It's me who's creating the problem.
Well, they don't say that enough in sharpening videos, right? they get too complicated with it and don't just simply say every swipe of the knife needs to be exactly the same angle. That's what you have to focus on. And it just seems like nobody ever says that. They're just like, oh, you use 220 and then you use, 440 and then you go up to 1,000 and you get this edge and look how shiny that is. And they make it look easy, just like Gordon Ramsay doing a kitchen knife, right? I mean,
Yeah, they're not wrong. They're just missing.
they're
Missing the
most
important elements
part.
of teaching,
Right.
which is this is what you need to focus on.
Right.
And even if you had, so we talked about like this one, even if you're learning, like set your angle, take a swipe, set your angle again, take a swipe, set your angle again, and
You feel it.
so you're feeling how that angle fits. So you're creating that neural pathway muscle memory to be able to repeat the process over and over again.
Yeah, that's cool.
Thanks.
That'll help, man. That'll really help.
Well, and it's like recurves are not difficult to sharpen if you have the right tools, which is something around it.
Okay.
I've told probably 600 people in the last year that there's thousands of videos online on how to sharpen a chisel grind. And there are. And I've seen some very good ones because the first chisel grind I ever owned was way before Skallywag and Gray's Custom. And I was like, I think I know how to sharpen this, but YouTube exists, so I'll YouTube it. And some of them were confusing. Some of them were just dead simple, but none of them touched base on the basic principle of the angle's got to be the same each time, and the angle needs to match the angle that's existing on the knife as close as possible, so we're not wasting material of the knife and shortening the life. It drives me crazy when, like, literally we'll ship an MDV to somebody, and then 2 or 3 days later, I'll get an email from them, and they'll say, how do I sharpen the knife? Well, it shouldn't even be in your head yet. Like, why are you... People have this thing where they like to put their own edge on the knife, and it's like, is the knife sharp enough to do what the job it is intended to do? Yes, of course it is, because it's a factory edge. Why are you wanting to? It'd be like taking your clean oil out of your engine and putting dirty oil in because it's thinner and it causes the engine to run better.
And I did the oil change.
Right. Exactly.
I put that edge.
Exactly. Yeah. So it makes no sense, but so the less you sharpen your knife, the longer your knife will last. So there's no reason to pre-sharpen a knife. Like, you don't need to put your edge on it. Just think you're just adding wear to the knife. So if it needs to be sharpened, sharpen it. But if it doesn't need to be sharpened, don't sharpen it. If it's not broken, don't fix it. It all goes down to that.
And again, like repeating it, I sharpen as little as possible.
Right.
To remove as minimal amount of material as I can to create the edge I want. I don't want to be like running through all my stones. And it's almost, you almost want to work backwards and start at a high stone and see if that creates your edge. And if you're struggling to remove stock, then go backwards as opposed to starting low and going up.
Right. Instead of automatically starting at 220 and removing a whole bunch of material and then having to go through the grits.
Yeah.
800 grit stone or even a 600 grit stone could clean up your problem right now.
Yeah, you may just have.
And then you're done.
Yeah, what you're trying to do is just knock that. There's a tiny, tiny flat where it's been worked, and all you're trying to do is just shave that off.
Well, it doesn't hurt to look at the edge with a magnifying glass either, does it? To actually see what's going on.
Well, light as well is really useful because if I'm looking at flats, if I can get under a light and then I roll the blade backwards and forwards, if I start seeing reflection on the edge, it'll show me where my flats are.
Right. That makes good sense.
So good light on your edge and then roll it backwards and forwards, and you can, like when I'm sharpening in the shop, I've got a light that shines down and it'll show me where I haven't fully cleaned up because I'll see the flats.
Since I have you here, there are people that ask to do this. First off, I don't like having a double-edged blade that's this small in my hand. I just feel like I'm going to touch it.
Yeah.
Right. But the thing is that I've gotten questions on, hey, can I sharpen this top end? And so my question to you is the repeat of that question, but more importantly, is that advised? Because now it's not sharp, and we're trying to make an angle. So you're going to be taking a lot of material off to try to hit that angle.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that and your thoughts?
So
If you had to do
if I
it,
had to, because it's not designed to be sharpened in the first place,
right,
because your bevel angle is almost at the angle you'd want to sharpen. So you're going to be doing this. So if I was going to sharpen this one, I would do all my grinding from the back edge.
okay,
I wouldn't touch this edge. And I would try to make a zero grind in here. Just because the issue you have is when you're it's just a bevel angle and a flat issue. So we also have like a 40 thou land on there, just because that creates support coming up to the tip.
right,
So normally, if you think about your bevel angles, like I do most of my knives. I'm between 6 and 4 degrees on each side. So we come down the center line. So this for me is like between 6 degrees and 4 degrees. And if you come less than 4 degrees, you're getting into like kitchen knife, where you want that super slim profile, but you're sacrificing strength for other uses. Which then I'll leave like between a 10 and a 5 thou land in here to sharpen, which means when I come in with like my 20 degrees, I get like that nice little, right, I get like that nice clean, tidy edge.
right.
So if I start coming up, and now I'm looking at like 12 degrees with a 40 thou land in here, my sharpen angle is going to end up doing this, and just you're going to end up with, like you said, you get like these huge grinds on there.
Yeah.
So you can, but it's not designed to be sharpened.
Right.
Like if you want a double edge, then you really want the same angle bevels on both sides,
Right.
same lands on both sides, because then you can create
And
a decent edge, whereas you're not going to create a decent edge trying to sharpen it.
Right.
So the answer is
Don't
no.
You
A
can,
resounding no.
just because you can doesn't mean you should.
Exactly.
Right. So it needs to be built into the original design.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not go, oh, this looks thin enough.
I can sharpen.
Yeah, you'll just ruin your knife.
Yes.
Yeah, and you probably get because somebody will put it on a grinder, because to remove that much stock,
You're going to get frustrated, so you're going to want to speed the process up, which means you're going to move stuff faster.
and then you're
Then
going
you
to
create
get it
heat, and then
Then
you
you're in the
trash your tank.
hot. And then your tip's going to break off when you drop it in the dirt. You're
Yeah.
going to be like, the tip broke off in my pocket. Well, nobody was doing anything to it. This is warranty. Yeah. You would not believe how often that happens. I was carrying my knife, and the tip just popped off. I'm like, so I always call it the magic break, and then they get upset because they're like, you're saying I'm full of shit. I'm like, yes, I'm saying you're full of shit.
I always enjoy why isn't it double edged? Because I didn't want it double edged.
Right.
But then it goes,
Right.
but this knife is. I was like, then buy that knife.
Yeah, then buy that knife. Yeah. That's why there's lots of knives.
Yeah.
Not every knife. There's no such thing as one knife that meets every need, because otherwise there wouldn't be 1,000, 10,000 different knife makers.
We'd all be making the same knife.
Everybody make the same knife, yeah. Like, yeah.
Cool.
There's nothing like that in the world. You know, people are gonna,
Until lightsaber.
if we do end up using any of this video, which is unlikely, they're gonna see those things in the background, and they're gonna be like, what are those? And we're gonna get 10,000 questions of what is that?
What are those?
What is that?
What are those green?
What is that goober stuff on? Why are those knives green? And
I want a green
what's in
knife.
that box? I want a green one, yeah. I want a green one with white boogery looking stuff on it. Clay. Why is that clay?
Secret knives that they make.
Right.
Yes, for $10,000, you too can have a green knife.
Yes.
It's only green for a little bit, because then it goes really black.
Then it gets really black, yeah. And then you'd have to smell it. If you want a green one, you'd have to come during the process of putting the green on, because that's hideous. Yeah, there's nothing fun about that at all.
Yeah, that's like I've had this one for so long. You can see how it just gets full, because I get lazy sometimes, and like if I'm sharpening a drill or just want to grind something quick, that one goes up in the vise, but yeah, it needs redressing. Another thought about stones, especially with the radius ones, is be consistent in wearing the stone, because when I work a stone, I'm removing part of the stone all the time. Like
Okay.
that's part of why it's wet. Part of why you use hone-in fluid is to keep the slurry from building up in the stone, but also to let like the surface break down a little bit. So I'm removing grit and then introducing fresh grit, which keeps the stone sharp. So if I just work one area, I'm going to create a divot in my stone. So the bigger area of my stone that I work, I'm going to consistently wear my stone.
And you always want to be pulling towards the edge, right? Like or it doesn't matter if you're pushing against the.
I don't think it matters. I like to draw towards me so the edge is going this way because it's easier for me to dismount.
Okay.
Whereas if I'm pushing in and I dismount, I stand a chance of dragging that edge.
Okay. So that the reason
Just a
that's,
personal choice thing.
Yeah, I was watching you and I never saw you go in the other direction,
Yeah.
so I just assumed that was. So that's the reason. It's not the fact that it won't sharpen
No.
the blade. It's just that.
No, for me, it's a control thing because if I'm pulling this way, and I think of it when I'm grinding I'm sharpening on the belts, my belt is always running like away from the edge because it makes it so much easier to dismount. So if I'm pulling this way, I just have to roll the knife up to dismount. And so I'm pushing. As I roll, I can grab that edge and start knocking it flat. And again, it's just knowing what I'm good at and knowing what I'm not good at. And I know that this way I can control the edge coming off the stone, whereas this way I'm like diving into the stone.
Right. Okay. No, that makes sense. No,
Both will work. Personal preference thing.
yeah, because on that wicked edge, sometimes on their instructionals, they're like rubbing straight up and down on it, and I guess under that thought process, it doesn't really matter. But like you're going out towards the edge, you're coming back on it, you're going up and down on it. It's like, so is there any? Do you just want to keep a consistent direction?
Yeah.
Or does it even just make sure you finish in the same direction? Is that
I don't really. It doesn't really matter too much. Like, because I'm just creating those teeth. I know you see people draw like just straight across, which in my mind, you're creating like a very flimsy edge. Because if we look at so we talked about like we're creating teeth.
yes?
Which means I'm drawing in this direction across my stone, right?
Okay.
So here's my direction. If I draw in this direction, what I do is I create my teeth in this direction, which means that this edge, if we look at it in a cross section, has the potential to have a V in it, right? On a very small level, which means that this edge can break out easy.
Okay.
So again, I'm sure there's somebody out there who will have a different opinion, and I may well be wrong, but so if I'm just drawing here, then all my teeth are going in this direction, which in my mind I can leave myself a very, very thin, weak edge. It may be very strong for a moment, but the chance of that cracking out as opposed to my teeth running this direction.
And that's why you go.
Yeah, that's why I kind of draw in this direction. Okay. So we're creating a little bit of an angle because we have to move the knife, right?
Yes.
To across that edge. But yeah, I don't do this.
Okay.
I just in my thought process, it's actually creating a very sharp edge, but not a strong one.
Yeah, and all this is your best practices.
Yes.
That's all I want.
Yes.
I'm not asking for all the variations to do it.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what happens when things get confusing.
Yeah.
Because what happens is people go, well, you can do this, and you can do this, and you can do this, and it's like, well, you're not supposed to do all of them at once.
Pick one.
Yes, and get really good at it.
And this is what I know has worked for me.
Okay.
Even if you're right as rain,
Somebody's
if you
going
put it on the internet,
to have a different way of doing it, which achieves the same result.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
neither are wrong.
and if that works, great.
Yeah, it's just choose your method and then fine tune and become good at that method.
But it is the internet. Even if there was actually only one exact way to do it, and that was the only way to do it, and you were God's gift expert at doing said thing, and you made that statement, somebody would tell you you were wrong
Yeah, of course.
because they've done it better, even though they've only done it twice.
Get that all the time.
Your chokes don't work that way because you can get out of it that way.
Put something online, and then somebody will argue, and I'm like, you fight the urge to go, who are you?
Yes. Where did you come from? Like, what rock did you come up from?
It feels like a super arrogant statement to go, why are you arguing with me? But at the same time, it's just like, I want to know who this person is. This person must be amazing because this is 30 years of information that I've
You
accumulated.
must be a hidden master.
And you're just acting like it's complete dog shit.
It was like the guy making the comment on your wrist grab that
Yeah.
they could just get right out of that. I'm like, you've never been grabbed by Mike before. He's never grabbed a hold of you before because all of a sudden you have a full new understanding.
It's like, out of the thousands of people I've trained, you don't think somebody was like, I think I can
Well,
get
good try
out.
that.
Never once.
And you're always willing to say, go ahead and try that.
Yeah, let's test it out.
Yeah, let's see if that works. If it does, I'll adopt it. Oh, that didn't work. Sorry. Oh, did that hurt?
It's like, this is how I hold people down. How do you know? Because I hold bull down.
Because I hold people down.
Because I hold people down that are huge, like Sasquatch size.
Yeah.
And it works really well. And he gets frustrated. If you can hold a bull down, you can.
Yeah.
That man is. That man is not of this earth.
That's funny, man.
I've seen him one-hand bench press people off of him like,
Oh,
there's absolutely
Just throw them
nothing.
off.
yeah.
And people are like, how do you do it? I was like, I don't let him do that to me. I don't put all my weight on his one hand. Like, what? You know? It's easier said than done, but like,
Yeah.
I gave him other options to worry about. That's funny. Oh, that's cool, man. Thanks, dude.
No worries.
It really helped because people really have. I mean, honestly, like in the last week, we've probably had 10 requests of, can you please do a video on how to sharpen the MDV?
Yeah.
and I get it.
I get
They want something from us.
Yeah.
Sure,
But
sure.
that's one
You
of the things. It's
yeah.
like, you know,
Yeah.
you designed the knife. You know, you guys made the knife. Like,
Well, let's face it, the reality of it is the reason we haven't done it is because all of our edges are done at the factory.
Right.
We don't physically do it. I don't consider myself a knife sharpening expert. That's Javan.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, and
and
anytime
so until
I-
we can get to the original designer of the knife and the person that actually physically makes, you know, knives that are well above $10,000 on a daily basis, who am I to say how to do it? Like,
Right.
go look at it. There's
and
good ways to do it, but I'm not going to be the one.
And that's exactly why I wanted you to tell me how to do this,
Yeah.
because I give you all my knives to sharpen,
Right.
right? So like, sharpen this. I need to go cut something,
Yeah.
you know. But that's where that information comes from,
Yeah.
you know. And so I get it. I understand.
Yeah, I mean, the MDV, is it trickier to sharpen than a full? Yeah, absolutely. But with the right tools and a little practice, it's not a difficult knife to sharpen. Right.
Yeah, it could be literally a 10-minute process.
Yeah. Well, we just did it on it
Yeah.
on a honing rod, right?
Yeah.
You can just chase that back edge and
Do it quickly and
you've got a sharp knife again.
Yeah, and then there is also the conversation of what you're using the edge for, right? So
Yes.
there's no real reason for you to have it super razor sharp, because what are you using that knife for? You're using it out of context,
Yeah.
or you're trying to get an edge, or you're trying to find a purpose for it that it's not designed for.
Yeah.
You know, if it's dull, then obviously sharpen it. But it's designed for very specific things, and you don't need a very sharp or razor.
Hair
like-
splitting edge.
Exactly.
people
you know?
do get confused about that because they want to put a polished razor edge on their knife.
It's like it
And
doesn't
correct me
shave.
if I'm wrong, but what I always tell them is you didn't buy a shaver, because if you've ever actually been to a barber that had a straight razor shave, every single time before they do it, they strop the knife, they sharpen the knife, and some of them will even put it on a stone first.
Yeah. So
Um,
you're getting back to
Getting back to edge angle. Right?
yeah, you're getting back to edge angle, right? So if you look at a razor like a true, you've got like an incredible hollow grind, right? That comes into a flat back edge.
Right.
So you're getting like this infinite thin edge on a razor.
Right.
Great for shaving, but you have to sharpen it each time because this is so thin. You're getting micro edges are breaking out the whole time.
Right.
So the sharper I get, the less life I'm going to get out of that edge, just because I've got such a thin section up on it.
Mhm.
Whereas you look at an axe for splitting, right, and we've got like this beefy angle, but it'll stay there for years without you having to touch it up.
Right.
So we're dealing with between like a razor and an axe edge, depending on application of what we're doing.
Well, I think a lot of people don't understand that. I think when people think of a knife, they think that the primary bevel on the knife that makes up the edge of the knife is actually the edge, and it's not. and you drew it earlier, but draw that again because you have your bevels and then you have what starts as a land or a flat.
Yeah, yeah. So
And then you have a secondary bevel.
that's where you get into like katanas and things, which are zero grind. And people love zero
Right.
grind as well, right? Which is beautiful because you can do like your nice 8-degree bevels and come into an infinite point on your bevel angles, which is great
Two
because
edges coming together.
you have plenty of stock in behind, which gives like a sword lots and lots of support behind that edge. Now sharpening it becomes tricky because I'm actually polishing the full bevel on it each time I come to it.
Unbelievable.
Whereas, let's say if this is a center line, when I design, so this would be pre-sharpened.
Right.
Okay.
And people don't realize that there's actually a secondary angle
Yes.
on the edge itself
Yes.
from the bevel of the knife.
Yeah. So say these are 4 degrees aside, right? And then I'll leave like a 0.01 land on that, which gives me like meat behind the edge. Because if I try doing 4 degrees to a zero grind, it's awesome. It's going to be sharp for about 10 minutes, and I'm going to start cracking
Right.
the edges out.
Right.
So I create this, and then I come in, and here is where my sharpen angle will be inside the bevels.
Right. And I don't think a lot of people actually realize it. I don't know that I realized it before I started watching you make knives, is that, you just think that, okay, well, I'm looking at my knife and there's a bevel there and it's sharp at the end.
Yeah, that's not a common sense thing. when
Right.
you look at it.
And there is literally a secondary angle, which is that angle. And that angle is typically put on by hand by the knife maker who's sharpening it or the factory.
So unless somebody explains it to you in this fashion, draws it out for you, you're seeing the end result of everything
Yes.
when you pull out your knife. So your knife is the end process,
Mm-hmm.
is perfect.
Mhm.
But if you were to make a knife, create a knife off of one of these blocks, right? The things is that, you're going to have to make that secondary
Yes.
angle.
You're going to have to create your sharpened edge.
Mhm.
It's the last, and once everything is assembled and marked and ready to go, it's the last thing I do is sharpen.
Here's a good example. I've been carrying that black water. Look how dirty it is. It's really ugly and dirty. It's got sticky stuff on it and silicone. And I use it and I've broken the tip off of it because I do things I shouldn't do. But when Javan resharpens this for me, I don't typically can't shave with it. Certainly can't shave my face. Because then the way I use this knife, that edge would get dull instantly because I've got such a thin edge on it. He'll put what we like to call a working edge on, which is not a razor edge, probably won't shave hair really super well, but I could cut boxes, I can cut rope, I can cut, I can do wire. And if I decide that, I don't have my cutters with me and I want to strip insulation off of a wire, I can get away with it because the edge is not so weak then that I'm not hurting the edge by doing so. And I use that all the time. And there's really no nicks in this edge. I was just stripping electrical wire with it last night.
Just like having a knife with a purpose-driven tool.
Yes.
Your edge is also purposely designed.
Yes.
Like,
And that's what I use that knife for. I don't take my MDV out and do things with it because that's you make fun of it, but in layman's terms, that's my defensive knife. That knife might need to save my life.
That's right.
In that case, this is my backup knife at that
It
point.
is meant for people or animals, like for a purpose of defense.
From
That-
saving your
that's,
life.
That's
Yeah.
why I call them people knives. Like
Yeah.
that's the only reason I would use it. I have a utility knife on me that I would use that for.
Which is a weird concept because most people I've never thought about carrying 2 knives. Why would I want to? Oh, well, maybe it's a good idea. Now I've got a knife for the specific purpose that I bought it for, of defending myself. And I just want to get an ice cream cone and get back home, but now I've been
Well,
accosted.
once you explain it, it makes a lot of sense. If I have a utility knife that I pull out and I've been using it for utility purposes, it may not cut. And
Might
that
not
may
do
be
what I
the
want.
only cut that I got.
Yeah.
That entire defensive, scenario. And so I want a blade that I have not used for anything else because I know that it has the highest possibility of doing the damage I need it to do at that moment. And the utility knife is just,
It's a utility
if it
knife.
doesn't cut through something, you're like, I need to go sharpen it.
It's okay.
And it won't kill you.
Right, right.
that penalty is not that high. It's just a little bit of time. A defensive knife or a fighting knife, there's a huge penalty if your knife doesn't work.
Yeah.
Mm.
So
Yeah, big penalty.
all right, so I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was a fairly long conversation between me, Javen, and Craig. There was a number of questions that we threw at him, and because he is a master of his craft, he easily answered them. So if you have any other questions, then obviously shoot them over to us. Easiest way to get a hold of me is content@eliteu.com. Once again, that is the email. For the purpose of simulating everything that we did on that conversation, I want to show you what I brought to him. Um, so you can purchase these. I purchased all of this crap on Amazon. So that's the brand. It's not that I'm pushing this brand. It's just that I wanted to. I went on Amazon. I tried to find something that was decent. These are ceramic, so do not drop them. I made that mistake, and it snapped in half. So you be careful with them. This white version, and they have a black colored one. They are different grits. Okay, so I believe that this is a finer grit. This is more coarse, and it just depends on what the purpose is. I believe this is more for honing, and then this is going to be a little bit more to sharpen if you have more chips in the blade or whatever. And so most people are only going to need this one. Remember what Javen was talking about. Do not sharpen your blade all the time. You're going to reduce the life of that blade. And so this is probably the way to sharpen that you're not going to need that much skill in. And it's real quick. The sharpening stones that I used. I had three of them when I went to go see Javen. I'm just going to pull only one of these things out. This is a 1,000 grit. You probably only need one of those. I did have three different ones as I progressed. You watched the video, so you know what he said about that. The big part about this, the feature that you're looking for, is this rounded or curved stone. You can do the flat edge, obviously, as you know, for the majority of your blades, but specifically for the inside of this, you want to make sure that you are using something that is rounded. It is the reason why this will still work, especially if you use it the same way Javen told you. So, look for these. If you want to have them, they are small enough for you to carry with you, so you can throw this into a pack. Remember to place this into water for about 10-15 minutes. And then go to sharpening it. Okay. So it'll just increase the life of the stone. You won't get all that grit directly inside of that and what have you. So I just wanted to kind of point all that out. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I hope that it answered your questions on how to sharpen them. Remember, sharpening knives is an art. The thing is that you are going to it's skill, so you're gonna have to practice it a lot. You are going to have some trial and error on it, but what we wanted to do is provide you with something that at a beginner skill level you could jump into, and for those that have some advanced knowledge, how to go from there. So I hope to see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.